Before we get into this video, it has come to my attention that some of my viewers seem to believe AI is making my videos. I don't know where you got that from since they're not that good, but I just wanted to give a quick on the contrary before starting this video because that hurts me. I already don't have a lot of time on my hands, but I do put in effort to make these videos. The gist might be poor quality and the pictures cutting in every other second can be distracting, especially if they're not timed just right, so I could see where you might assume that's due to AI lag. I never really cared for my in-person videos for this channel. That was something I kind of wanted to save for Patreon. The pictures and cutting in with memes just fit better with my dry sense of humor, and they're a lot less time consuming than screen recording things off YouTube to fit the vibe of what I'm trying to say, which is why I do it. But you are right about one thing. I can do better. I could put a little more effort in spots I can afford, which is something I'm working on. I'm still trying to figure out what might work best for my channel, and just getting the right flow is part of that. Unfortunately, I'm still in the developmental phase, and you guys are my guinea pigs. So, just to clear this up, I write my own scripts. I edit my own videos. I make my own jokes, terrible as they are. And one day I'll have more time to invest in my channel like I will with my books when I'm not working 2 jobs just to pay my bills. So for now, you're stuck with my non-AI, personally edited except for the chroma key bits videos in all of their cringy glory. But with that said, what the hell happened to children's fiction? One minute I'm hearing about Harry Potter and the Little Treehouse, and the next it's all YA. I remember when kids were reading Eragon and Hunger Games, but there's so much that's happened in the last 10 years, it almost feels like everything has become hyper-aware, hyper-political, and at the same time, critically unaware of why their stories aren't catching like they used to. Once upon a time, we told children stories that were more than just the happy-go-lucky fairy tales. They were tales of caution, warning them against strangers, dark forests, and hungry wolves. Children weren't just given bedtime stories to be put to sleep. They were given lessons, morals, building blocks for a foundation to recount things they wouldn't know to think twice about otherwise. Don't trust strangers. Don't stray too far or you'll get lost. Don't eat poison apples. Part of raising kids is teaching them about the world, training them to trust their instincts and looking for warning signs for survival. Lessons like these are more memorable and easy to digest and understand at a younger, more impressionable age when they're put into story form. It sticks with us, even through adulthood. It wasn't just a matter of teaching, but a matter of protection and safety for the kids to look out for themselves when adults weren't around to protect them, or for when they would grow older and have to make the decisions on their own. But somewhere along the way, the idea of safety changed from teaching children how to protect themselves and become self-sufficient to leaning more towards shielding them from the world altogether. Is that kind of safety really for the kids or for the parents' peace of mind? I can remember when I was a kid, the Harry Potter books were all the rage. But an even bigger rage was that divide between the parents who argued Harry Potter was just a fictional series and those religious zealots who insisted anyone who read them was going to hell for indulging in a fantasy about wizardry and witchcraft. In fact, I didn't watch Harry Potter movies until this year. I finally made it through the whole series, which I would like to eventually do a video discussing just from my personal experience and the tumult it caused compared to the irony of the stories, but I still have to read the books. A big part of the controversy was what I think also made it more popular. We all know what happens when someone tells a kid that they can't have their favorite toy anymore. They go bananas. And Harry Potter wasn't just a story about witches and wizards going to Hogwarts to defeat the Dark Lord. It was about friendship, trust, puberty, and the harder parts of growing into adulthood that we now come to reflect on today. That's why it's still so popular. People didn't just like Harry Potter, they grew up with it, and it grew up with them, side by side. But it did raise a lot of concerns, and kind of helped expose some of what we call helicopter parenting, especially in the 90s. Parents who were notorious for the overprotectiveness of their kids, from skinned knees to participation trophies. And while I definitely get the fear of corruption when it comes to raising a younger generation, or rather having media raise that generation for you when their fundamental ideas differ from the values you're trying to instill in them, eventually children grow up. And eventually, they start to make their own decisions. They become their own people, and they might not end up sharing those same values that you shared anyways. They might, one day, actually watch Harry Potter and like it. Because there's more to stories than just stories. The effect those stories have on us can follow us all throughout life, creating core values to reflect on and utilize to reshape an entire generation. It's been more than, 20 years, and Harry Potter is still a cultural phenomenon. It had that much of an influence. And there are some writers who are aware of this, but don't seem to quite grasp what it is that impacts kids today. They know they want to have an impact, but they're more about forcing that impression rather than reaching kids to make it through use of persuasion or teaching. There's a different kind of ideology at play that can also have an effect on how we live our lives and the choices we make, which is the idea that everything has to be good or bad, and that there's no in between. Some people have waken up to the fact that fiction has become more politicized. I don't think it's the fact that political fiction is this new thing. We've encouraged reading George Orwell, Margaret Atwood, Fahrenheit 451 for decades in high school. Political fiction isn't new, even for kids. But today, it seems to be more and more bad. It's just bad. It's not intellectual, it's not intelligent, it's just bad. I don't think this is a respectable outlook. It feels more predatory than anything else. One has to admit that we don't know as much as we think we know to even consider having something to pass on, but it's just coming off as something more to force feed a generation they don't actually know how to reach because they have little to no experience in any of the topics talked about. Most writers are less concerned about what kids want, insisting instead on what they need, the primary focus seeming to be more on what we want this future generation to do for us. This also ties into the idea that books are just stories and fairy tales, and if there's no activism involved, then it's a waste of time. Harry Potter wasn't the only book series that had a heavy impact on the younger generation regarding politics. Hunger Games would be another one. Granted, I think it made a lesser impact given the shorter time frame, the sudden approach to darker content and themes, but also because of the love triangle that which tied things in since we were still coming off the tail end of the Twilight trend. Vampire fiction was still all the rage, but Hunger Games seemed to move YA to heighten this dystopian phase where we got books like Divergent, Maze Runner, and Uglies, just to name a few. Suddenly, another door had opened. Influence disguised as what-if questions wrapped in pick-me clothes and boxes with labels to help us determine what group we would fit in with. Not unlike the Sorting Hat from Harry Potter. With a generation at its more independent stage striking us with these questions to help kids better figure out where they might fit in with society, discovering where their place would be and what they would be best at, all the while hinting that those who don't feel like they fit in are actually doing something right. And while there is nothing inherently wrong with encouraging a generation to be their best selves, like George Orwell wrote, some would rather be more equal than others. This is where I feel like the attention started to stray from the helicopter parenting of the 90s, encouraging us to be the best we can be, to this sort of competitive state about being better than everyone else. What happens when we find out that unlike stories perpetuating this idea are actually not real life? Insecurities follow. And we feel like we're supposed to be better, even though we're not, and the pick-me/mean girl energy kind of changes the dynamic of the narrative. Over time, I feel like we've outgrown these concepts, but the collateral damage is starting to show through fiction more and more, especially in YA today. Rather than writing a niche or with purpose, or even an agenda as we've witnessed in recent years, it has taken on the form of trend chasing. We're less about leaving an impression, or making an impact, or even influencing a future generation, and now instead focused on how much money we can squeeze out of said generation to jumpstart a career most never even knew they wanted. Because people that are more impressionable also tend to be more gullible and haven't learned how to pick out the strengths from weaknesses, let alone recognize somebody's true character. Maybe this is why the world building has gotten so boring. All we need is a basic map made up of randomized beans or rice or an online generator to give quirky names. We don't need hard thinking like figuring out the layering of societal standards, political systems, or why there's alchemy, but we're still riding horse and buggy. And then throw in a magic system for default in case anyone has any questions. Things don't have to make sense. It's magic. Most writers who write YA aren't intentionally writing for kids or the future generation. That's the thing. They're writing it because it's easy, it's simplistic, because most, if not all, who read books in this genre, particularly of the fantasy type, don't actually ask questions. We've seen more adult themes in YA genre also due to its changing demographic, with the sales heightened by the online frenzy of book talkers and booktubers looking for low fantasy stories that aren't quite past high school level of reading. We're witnessing the disappearance of the YA genre as it morphs into more of this new adult with the smut-selling paperbacks like dime novels of old. Suddenly, the kids are forced to adapt to the new standards of toxic romance and questionable standards, or remain placid in their middle grade or elementary school level fiction. Maybe this is why the older YA novels are still heavily advertised for that age group, because writers who insist they're writing for YA aren't actually writing for that age group. Their target demographic isn't teens. It's adults. Most reputably, adult women who see no problem with books like Verity, A Court of Thorns and Roses, and A Little Life as being shelved with the labels insisting this is what kids are reading these days. Any adult who doesn't know any better might not even think twice. The book covers make them look innocent, edgy, or fundamentally challenging. I'm all for being the best that you can be, but somewhere along the way, we've forgotten that while taking that route, we should lend a hand here and there. It isn't just the road we walk down or the books we want to read, but about sharing those experiences, those lessons, the things that we love in life for those who haven't decided whether they want to take the same path. It's ignorant to ignore the impact that has been made from the trend chasing and consumerism bloating TikTok and booktube booktube that is absolutely going to have an effect on what sells, where the future of writing and reading goes. We have a serious problem. That problem is wrapped in the narcissism of online media, encouraging us to seek out our own wants and desires over considering the long-term effects and the common good of those around us. That's all I've got for you today. If you liked the video, make sure to hit the thumbs up. You want more of my random rantings? Hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any. Anyway, I'll see you guys next time.